Hi, I'm Matt Driscoll, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Today we're in conversation with Sumesh Patel. He's the president of Asia Pacific for the technology company SITA. Welcome to the show, Sumesh.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking to you.
Anyone involved in aviation knows that we're facing a crisis like never before. The world's passenger fleet is basically being grounded except for some areas with domestic traffic, and even those are operating at way below normal capacity. There's few international flights. When we were talking right before we started the show, I mentioned that the World Tourism Organization had announced that basically said every country in the world has put some sort of restriction on international travel and entry into the different countries. Everything that we hear is that the industry has been, quote, changed forever. Give us your take from SITA, because you are basically an association of different companies. Where is the industry today? Give us kind of your feeling of what it will take for planes to start flying again, especially here in Asia.
Well, thanks, Matt. SITA is an integral part of the air transport industry. We are fully owned and dedicated to the airlines and airports around the world. We serve around 1,000 airports globally. Almost every airline in the world uses some or the other services from SITA, and we also serve about 40 governments. From our side, we can clearly see a drop in traffic, whether it is messaging, loaded bags, or ACARS traffic. If we look at messaging, in 2019, it was 9.8% higher traffic compared to 2018. And in April 2020, it has 80% lower compared to April 2019. So that clearly shows. So what our messaging service does is serve, almost about 60% of the industry traffic flows through SITA, and that has dropped almost about 80% in this April 19. Now, if you look at the loaded bags, before we entered into the beginning of COVID-19, we recorded about 2.7 million loaded bags, and at the end of April, they were down to 35,000. Almost 99% decrease, and to be precise, 98.67% decrease compared to when we entered into this pandemic. And also in terms of flight activities, if you look at our ACARS messages, the activities are down by 80% globally year on year. It seems that we have reached to the bottom of the crisis. Obviously, the industry will not emerge from the crisis in the same way it went in, but a new normal will come up. And in terms of returning back to the traffic, we have seen that Asia, we were the first one to get hit globally. And we see some domestic, recovery in places like China, Vietnam, South Korea, Indonesia. So things are getting back to normal, but it will certainly be a slow start.
Given that airlines operate on razor-thin margins, and this is one of my favorite anecdotes that I've heard from many of the conferences that I've been to over the 5 years that I've been editor of the magazine, everybody says that most airlines are a hamburger and a Coke away from making a loss on a passenger, because in different areas, the margin per passenger per flight ranges from $3 to $17. We've already seen some airlines go out of business. How can the survivors deal with things like, people are talking about, continuing social distancing, IATA, ICAO, other people are talking about developing some sort of a health passport, like the old yellow fever cards that people used to have to carry. And we're talking about longer turnaround times for deeper cleaning of planes. How are the survivors going to deal with all that?
I think no doubt the air transport industry will need to radically change the way we operate today. The recovery and I would say the eventual resurgence of the industry will certainly require building the trust among the industry players and the passengers, of course. And we need to also step up the operational efficiencies to deliver a safe and enjoyable journey for the passenger. And, I feel that the technology, processes, and the ways of working, and above all, collaboration between the industry stakeholders, be it airlines, airports, ground handlers, government, will help in facilitating the recovery. So some of the things like you mentioned in terms of social distancing, certainly the technology can help, to facilitate that. Pressing the passenger at risk, the technology can help with that. So clearly, the airline and the industry, the whole air transport industry will need to collaborate to make sure that we are all on the same page since we are facing the same challenge, and it is really essential role for everyone to work together to facilitate the recovery.
Well, that was actually my next question. I mean, your boss, and I'm probably going to mispronounce her last name, so I'll let you do it. Barbara
Dalibard.
Dalibard, okay. She recently gave an online seminar, and like most, it was at night, our time here in Singapore. And you touched on this in an earlier answer where you talked about the new normal, and this is going to lead into another question later on. But the coordination that you just spoke about, that's what I'm curious about, because even after 9/11, when air traffic took a big hit, there was a sort of patchwork of security standards that varied around the world. Is this time going to be different? I mean, ICAO seems to have been a little bit slow out of the gate, setting up a task force. Do you see the coordination happening now?
I think we believe, and as Barbara had alluded, as you rightly said, with the changing face of aviation, we see there will be three focus areas for the new normal. The first one being the economic pressure, the need to drive the operational cost efficiencies. So there are still some questions unanswered. If the recovery takes longer than expected, will the airlines shrink their fleets to manage the contraction in demand? And how so even today, the airlines, airports, they are really making most of their assets, but they will have to sweat their assets even more to be more effective. The second focus area would be safety and security. So if we talk about, the safety and security before 9/11, it was mainly focused on the aircraft and safety procedures. That was all safety and security were all about. After 9/11, we began to consider anti-terrorism measures. We go through security, we take our laptops out, take our shoes off, our belts off, and now, will health be added as a third requirement in safety and security? And certainly, yes. The governments, will take a new and perhaps more rigid approach to reopening and managing their borders. And finally, the third piece is on sustainability. With the increased pressure for a more sustainable industry, with a demand for cleaner skies, is it likely that there will be a shift from business to a leisure travel? Because for business, all of us are now getting used to new digital solutions to connect with our customers, our employees. But one thing also on sustainability, maybe it drives the airline to cut down their costs. To retire their older aircrafts much earlier than they had already planned, that can help them reduce the cost and have much newer fleet and newer cost-effective equipment to help to deal with the new requirements.
And going back to this new normal, and this may sound like a bit of a philosophical question, but I like, it's kind of a hobby of mine. Humankind seems to have a pretty short collective memory. If you studied history at all, we knew about the Black Death in Europe, killed about a third of the population. The Spanish flu that killed, estimates range from 50 million to 100 million. We had SARS not too long ago. We had MERS in the Middle East. Scientists have been issuing warnings for years. But, I mean, the airlines, they're squeezing more and more passengers into smaller seats to fill the plane. I know that aviation is going to take a short-term look at all of this, but will these memories fade with time, and will airlines go back to trying to get as many people on the plane as they can?
Clearly, the geopolitical landscape will be a key consideration for tomorrow. COVID-19, as all of us know, has had a rapid and a dramatic impact on our industry, overall the air transport industry over the past, I would say few weeks and few months. The major focus so far for both by our industry and of course the media is on the financial and the human capital impacting the grounding of the aircraft. So clearly the airline groundings have had a major impact on the financial and the human capital overall on our industry. Well, for us and SITA, our immediate response is to support the industry to get through this current challenges. Clearly, we can no longer consider returning to a normal operating environment for our industry as it is today, but rather one that will be a new normal. And at this point, no one can predict what the future may bring. We are beginning to develop scenarios, so we don't know what the future will be, but we are clearly working on scenarios about what the new normal might look like, and closely working with our airline, airport, and other stakeholder partners. Because today, the way we operate in terms of our passenger flow, the way the airlines do their business is completely going to change in the near future. And when we get to a bit of technology, we can share in terms of the areas where these changes would be coming.
At its heart, SITA is basically a tech company, and in the report, when Barbara had her webinar, talked about things like biometrics, touchless air travel, mobile-enabled journeys. Give us an idea of what SITA is working on in these fields and how receptive the industry is. But my question is, the airlines are trying to survive right now. They're burning through cash. Their planes are grounded. You're seeing planes fly with one passenger or two passengers, except one I saw. I think it was a United flight that it was completely packed. But are they going to be willing to invest in the new technology like that just to survive? And are there any regional differences?
Well, as you know, SITA is owned by the air transport industry, and we are trusted and neutral partner with them for about 70 years and has the industry expertise. Maybe I would touch on two key solutions which we feel would help, addressing the current challenges. One is the biometric solution, right? So we have a SITA SmartPath solution, which in fact, it's not new. We have that in working for almost about 18 months now. And there are a number of airports, like if you look at in our region, Beijing Airport in China already has it, Hamad Airport in Qatar, Muscat in Oman, Orlando and Miami in US, also in Europe like Greece. Clearly, what this solution does is that at the first touch point, basically it validates your biometric details with your passport, and then every step of the journey is basically your face is all your documents you require. So you can get through with immigration, you can get through with your backdrop, with your boarding, going to lounge. Everything can be done with just showing your face. So clearly, we see that with this changing, the adoption of this technology will accelerate. In terms of the cost, clearly the new technology, when we do the implementation, has, yes, some initial cost, but on a longer term, basically looking at both the current challenges and dealing with the current requirements, and in terms of a long-term benefit, clearly this technology will certainly accelerate. And the second one is about the SITA Flex. It's a cloud-based platform for passenger processing, and it enables passenger and the workforce mobility with apps accessible from anywhere. So the airline staff, they don't need to be sitting and consolidated at the desk. They can be at anywhere in the airport and still perform their functions. And also for passenger, they use their own mobile. So even rather touching the kiosk, they have their own device, and there is a barcode which they can flash it right in front of the kiosk. They get their boarding pass, they get their baggage tag printed. So clearly these technology we see will really help to accelerate. And in terms of the investment, they work on the existing infrastructure. So you don't need a huge lot of investment. it's some software and some changes into the current investment which can help to accelerate the implementation of these new technologies.
I mentioned earlier things like aircraft turnaround times that have been increased basically because they're doing deeper cleaning on the aircraft. And I was looking at SITA's website. You've got an application called SITA for Aircraft. How does that work? What exactly is that?
Okay, so SITA for Aircraft, a suite of application solution, basically helps airline evolve and adapt, starting from pre-flight all the way to post-flight. Bringing together the technology solution and, of course, our deep understanding of the airport operations. This helps the airline and the airport improve the aircraft turnaround times. In turn, fuel efficiency and on-time performance. So when we say that there will be more time required for cleaning and turnaround, certainly this solution can help to make sure that we are doing things much better and faster than what we have today. Ultimately, our application assists airline in the safe tracking of the flights and enhance air-to-ground communication, optimizing the overall flight operation.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but organizations like ICAO, IATA, ACI, others, are talking. They're definitely talking about medical pre-screenings. You've seen airports, particularly in the Middle East, that are doing COVID testing before you get on the aircraft. I'm old enough to remember carrying the little yellow card that showed I had my yellow fever vaccination and all of that when I started traveling internationally. So these so-called health passports or something like that, is that a technology that SITA could get involved in, or is that out of your outside your field?
Well, certainly we address this area too. So, and as you rightly said, when the countries begin to ease restrictions or they ease restrictions, the authorities will be mindful of preventing the resurgence, right? And when they open up the borders, they will do that in a controlled manner, considering, of course, the health as one of the key criteria, and mainly looking at the passenger and asking for the details of passenger at the end, at the point of embarkation, having their details even before they land into country B. And also the technology to identify or assess at-risk passenger. So when we look at in this new operating environment, digital and intelligent border technologies will help border to be reopened in a safe and a controlled way. And also will give government the ability to respond quickly to events. And our border solution can play a vital role in reestablishing the passenger trust through the optimal management of security and facilitation. So if, for example, it tracks the passenger all the way, are they boarding from a risk country? Where have been their travel plan? Where have they visited? When they are in the aircraft, what seat they were sitting on? So, if they are at risk, they can easily be tracked and also help the local governments to identify and assess at-risk passengers who are sitting next to them. So, yes, there is a technology available and can be implemented quite quickly.
Okay. Now, I love computers probably more than the next guy, and if you've seen my studio setup, you would understand, and my wife has told me that I can't buy any more equipment. But when I travel, I like to have a little human-to-human contact as well. I like to check in, especially if I'm upgraded. I like to check in, have them do all the bag tags and everything else. And it seems like nowadays we're pushing everything onto the passenger, from checking themselves in, printing out their own bag tags, doing everything else. Now, I know SITA is a technology company, but are we going too far with automation, or will this pandemic push even more self-service onto the passenger? And I know younger people than me, they live on their mobile phones, but people like my 80-year-old father, he's never even sent an email in his life. How's he supposed to check into a flight when he doesn't even know how to send email?
I think the challenge we see now is, Matt, it's more about safety versus technology, right? So, in past, people had an option to say, do I want to use the technology 100% or no? But when it comes about, when it's speaking about personal safety, I'm sure people will be willing to adapt there. And I can say that, your father would have certainly learned to use a bit of smartphone, at least to stay in touch with you and his loved ones in this new normal. So it's not like complete technology. Maybe, yeah, he wouldn't have sent an email, but he can maybe use smartphone. And what we feel is that, yes, the technology adoption will be much faster. We will go to the digital transformation much faster, but certainly there will still be the human factors still be there. For example, unassisted kids, those are older parents, those requiring assistance. So it will not completely go away, but for your own safety, maybe you would prefer not to touch anything, have your own mobile as your device which you trust, and with that, walk through or have a walkthrough experience. And even to an extent, airports are even looking at, some of the solutions which we provide in terms of Airport Flex and our omnichannel solution, where they can do a lot of things even before they arrive to the airport. So, for example, you have your ID or your personal identification validated on your own mobile, create a 2D barcode. When you go to the airport and flash your barcode, it validates you as Matt and with your facial biometrics, and there it prints your boarding pass and then baggage. You don't need to even touch anything. So, these technology would be more and more, I would say, people would be adapting that more in terms of not being technological savvy, but more from the safety point of view.
Yeah, actually, my father did buy his first smartphone about a month ago, and he's figured out how to use WhatsApp and make a WhatsApp video call. So now he's been calling me every weekend.
So it's not, and similarly, these technologies will not be that complicated of setting up a server and things like that. But we love to do, but it will be made so easy that you check in and just flash your phone. So taking into consideration of different people and a different profile will be using the technology.
Samesh, the consensus seems to be that domestic travel will return first, regional travel following that, international very slowly, according to all of the webinars that you and I have both been watching and listening to and participating in. Would you agree with that? And I'm curious, from a technical standpoint, which carriers or which regions would you consider more technically ready to get back in the air? And I know you don't want to name names, but are LCCs technically more ready, or bigger international carriers? Is Asia more technically adept at adopting these new technologies?
I would say the good thing is that the technology has evolved over the years. And, gone are those days, if you recall at the airport where the airlines used to have dedicated counters, dedicated terminals, it's going away, quite rapidly because of scarcity of space. And while we say the passenger numbers are likely to take some time, at least 18 to 24 months and that's the minimum what the industry experts are saying, to come back to 2019 levels. The new challenge we have is, safe distancing, right? So that the challenge, even with the lesser passengers, the challenge of the space at the airport doesn't go away. So clearly, we will need to move to more shared technology, and which most of the airports are currently doing, right? Today, we serve almost about 1,000 airports, and I can tell you most of them are today ready to serve domestic, regional, or international carriers. Having said that, there would be some more, in terms of how expedite the implementation of the other technology, like I mentioned in terms of the SITA Flex, our omni-channel solution. And that's not too difficult, because the good thing about those technology is that they are cloud-based, they are low cost, and very minimal. There are easily the APIs available for the airlines to integrate into these new technologies. So making it easier and faster in terms of the adoption. So clearly, I wouldn't say that LCCs would be faster compared to the other carriers, or the international carriers will be faster. The adoption of the technology, I would say, would be almost the same in terms of irrespective of the airline size or readiness today.
Sumesh, finally, I try to end these shows by asking if there's a bright spot to this whole thing. COVID-19, I mean, it's not only devastated the aviation industry and killed a lot of people and tragically ended a lot of lives too short. And millions of people have lost their jobs. I mean, it's just a horrible situation worldwide. But is there any bright spot? Is there anything that anyone can look forward to, especially people in aviation? Do you see anything positive? Is there a bright spot that aviation can look forward to?
I think, like us, we've spent all our life in the air transport industry. Our industry has seen many ups and downs, and no doubt this one has the most and the lasting impact. However, I'm confident the industry will bounce back with the new normal. And clearly with, the new technology, the new ways of working, which will help to address the current challenges, it should certainly bounce back with the new normal.
Sumesh Patel, President of Asia Pacific for SITA, thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks for having me.